I didn't think I was the company guy. I was just reliable. The person who stayed late when a client email came in at 9:41 p.m. The person who knew which spreadsheet was lying and which one was telling the truth. The person who could walk into a meeting with bad news and still walk out with a handshake. That's what I told myself anyway. Because if I'm being honest, I built my life around one belief. If you work hard and keep your head down, you'll be safe. Not rich, not famous, just safe. And for a long time, it felt true. I was 36, living in a clean one-bedroom just outside the city, and my days were predictable in the way adults secretly crave. Wake up, coffee, commute, meetings, more meetings, late lunch at my desk, then home. My world didn't have drama, it had deadlines. The company was called Hawthorne Logistics, mid-sized, corporate enough to have values posters in the hallway, but not big enough to feel untouchable. We weren't glamorous. We were the kind of business that kept other businesses alive. Transport routes, vendor contracts, cost controls, compliance, all the boring stuff that turns chaos into profit. And I was good at it. Not I'm a genius, good. More like, I noticed things, patterns, pressure points, places where money leaked out quietly. My official title was Operations Analyst, but my real job was solving problems before they turned into disasters. And that mattered because Hawthorne had one golden client, our biggest contract, the one everyone bragged about like we'd personally invented it, Gray Line Retail. If you've ever ordered something online and it arrived 2 days later like magic, companies like Gray Line or Y, they were expanding fast and Hawthorne handled a big chunk of their regional fulfillment. Gray Line was also the reason my boss, Darren, walked like he owned the building. Darren was my VP, early 40s, always polished, always smiling in a way that never touched his eyes. He'd learned how to say the right things in meetings and let other people do the work that made those words true. To be fair, he wasn't stupid. He was just the kind of guy who thought leadership was talking louder than everyone else. But Darren liked me, not in a warm way, in a useful way. He'd pull me into executive prep calls and say things like, "Ethan, give me the clean version," which meant translate the mess into something he could sell upstairs. He'd forward my reports to the CEO and delete my name off the top. I noticed. I didn't say anything, because I thought I understood the game. Take the hits, stay valuable, and eventually it pays off. The week everything broke started with something small. A Gray Line manager sent a late-night message. "We're seeing delays in Zone 4. Can you audit this?" Zone 4 was my territory, my dashboards, my processes. So I did what I always did. I stayed late. I pulled the logs, tracked the vendor tickets, cross-checked the routing, ran a simple reconciliation against the invoices, and that's when I saw it. Not a mistake. Not a systems glitch. A pattern. 3 expedited shipments, high cost, high priority, had been approved under my credentials. The problem? I hadn't approved them. At first, my brain tried to protect me. Maybe I clicked something by accident. Maybe I forgot. Maybe the system auto-approved. But the timestamps were precise. The approvals were deliberate. And the shipments weren't even for Gray Line's usual distribution points. They were to a private storage facility, a place I'd never seen on any of our approved lists. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling that slow, icy sensation you get when you realize you're standing too close to something dangerous. Because if those shipments were fraudulent, my name was attached to them. And if Gray Line caught it, Hawthorne wouldn't just lose a client. Someone would need a scapegoat. I printed the approval logs, slipped them into my bag, and told myself I'd handle it in the morning. That night, I didn't sleep right. I kept waking up with the same thought punching through my chest. If this goes wrong, they'll blame the person whose credentials were used. Me. The next morning, I went straight to Darren's office. He was on a call, laughing like everything in the world was easy. He held up one finger to tell me to wait. I stood there with my folder, like a kid outside a principal's door. When he finally waved me in, he ended the call and leaned back in his chair like he was doing me a favor. "What's up, Ethan?" I laid the printed logs on his desk. "I think there's a problem with approvals on expedited shipments. 3 went through under my credentials. I didn't authorize them." He barely glanced down. Then he did something that still makes my stomach twist when I replay it. He smiled. Not a warm smile. A management smile. The kind that says, "I heard you. I'm choosing not to care." "Okay," he said, tapping the papers like they were irrelevant. "We'll look into it." "We need to look into it now," I said. "If Grayline sees these charges, it'll trigger an audit." He sighed like I was inconveniencing him. "Ethan, you're anxious. That's your thing. But you don't need to spin yourself up. We're in the middle of renewal talks." Renewal talks. That was the phrase that explained everything. They weren't going to investigate anything that might make them look messy in front of Grayline. They were going to bury it, and if it surfaced anyway. I watched Darren's eyes move from the papers back to me. "Just don't email anybody about this," he said calmly. "Let's keep it internal." I walked out of his office and felt something change in me, a small, quiet shift, like my trust in the company didn't snap. Trust rarely snaps. It leaks out slowly until one day you look down and realize there's nothing left. I went back to my desk and opened my laptop. My inbox was full. Calendar reminders, project updates, normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on a trapdoor and someone else had their hand on the lever. So I did something I'd never done before. I started making copies, not stealing, not doing anything illegal, just documenting my work. I pulled my reports from the server and saved time-stamped PDFs in a personal archive. I exported my dashboards. I backed up my process notes, because if something exploded, I wanted proof of what I actually did and what I didn't do. 2 days later, Darren called an all-hands meeting for our division. He stood in front of the screen with that confident smile and said, "We're entering a new chapter." People clapped. Someone joked about bonuses. Then Darren turned and looked directly at me, and my stomach dropped, because I recognized the expression on his face. It was the same one he'd worn when he told me not to email anyone. Polite, calm, pre-planned. "Unfortunately," he said, "we've had to make a few tough decisions to protect the company's future." My name was next. He didn't say it dramatically. He said it like he was reading the weather. "Ethan Carter will be leaving us effective immediately." The room made that sound, half surprise, half curiosity. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I waited for him to say why. He didn't. He just kept talking, like I was already gone. And right then, my laptop screen went black. A pop-up appeared. "Your account has been disabled." Not at the end of the day. Not after an HR meeting. Right there, in front of everyone. I stood up slowly, aware of every eye on me. Darren held up his hands like he was being gracious. "Let's give Ethan privacy," he said. Privacy. As if he hadn't just executed me in public. I picked up my bag because it was the only thing I still owned in that building. And as I walked toward the door, my phone buzzed once in my pocket. A new email notification from Grayline. Subject line: expedited shipment charges. Need immediate clarification. I walked out of Hawthorne Logistics, feeling the air hit my face like a warning, because now I understood what Darren had done. They didn't just cut me off. They cut me off at the exact moment the bomb was about to go off. And they left my name on it. I sat in my car for a full minute before I turned the key. Not because I was crying. I wasn't. My body didn't even know what to do yet. It was like my brain had flipped into a cold, practical mode, because if I let the emotion in, I'd fall apart in the parking lot. And I refused to give Darren that. Grayline's email was still on my lock screen. Expedited shipment charges. Need immediate clarification. I read it 3 times, like the words might change if I stared hard enough. Then the reality hit. My company had just disabled my access, publicly separated me, and at the exact same moment, our biggest client was asking me to explain charges tied to my credentials. which meant two things were true at once. This wasn't a coincidence. They were preparing to pin it on me. I called Grayline anyway. It rang twice before someone picked up. Grayline Finance, this is Marissa. Marissa, it's Ethan Carter. I paused, choosing words carefully. I'm the operations analyst who's been handling Zone 4. I saw your email. I want to help clarify the shipment charges. There was a brief silence. Then, Ethan, we were told you left the company. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. That's not exactly how it happened, I said. But yes, my access was terminated today. I can still explain what I know. Another pause. I could hear typing on her end. I'm going to be transparent, she said. These charges are flagged as unusual. 3 expedited shipments. High cost, routed to an unapproved location. They were approved under your login. I didn't approve them, I said immediately. I reported it internally 2 days ago. Do you have documentation? I looked down at the folder on my passenger seat. The printed logs I'd shown Darren, the ones he tapped like they were nothing. Yes, I said. I do. Okay, she replied, because our policy is simple. If we can't validate, we freeze payment and open a vendor review. That impacts Hawthorne's renewal. Of course it does. Renewal talks. Darren's obsession with not making waves suddenly made 6 sense. If Grayline froze payment, the executives would panic. And if executives panic, they sacrifice someone. I swallowed the anger and kept my voice calm. Marissa, I'm willing to send you what I have, I said, but I need you to understand. I don't have system access anymore. Send what you can, she said. And Ethan? Yeah. Her voice softened a fraction. If this is fraud, it won't just be a billing issue. It becomes compliance. Maybe legal. My pulse jumped. Understood, I said. I'll email you within the hour. I hung up and stared out the windshield at the building I'd worked in for 8 years. 8 years of being useful. 8 years of swallowing credit theft and ego politics and late-night emergencies. And they'd cut me off like a cable subscription. I drove home on autopilot. When I got inside, I put my keys down, opened my laptop, and started a clean email to Grayline with attached PDFs. Approval logs, timestamps, the routing discrepancies. My internal note to Darren. I didn't embellish, I didn't accuse anyone. I just stated facts. Because facts are the only thing that can survive corporate spin. I hit send. Then I did something else I didn't expect. I opened my personal notes file, the one I'd started just in case, and I began writing everything down in a timeline. Not dramatic, not emotional, just who, what, when, and why. Because the moment Grayline escalated, Hawthorne would rewrite history, and I wasn't going to let them write mine. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Ethan, Darren said like we were old friends. We need to talk. The calmness in his voice was almost impressive. I didn't answer right away. He continued. Grayline reached out. They're asking questions. You've been emailing them. I stared at the wall, feeling that slow burn rise in my chest. You mean the questions I warned you about, I said. He gave a practiced chuckle. Listen, let's not do this emotionally. This is business. You're no longer with the company, and communicating with our client creates confusion. Confusion, that's what he called it. Not fraud, not risk, not my name being used to approve shipments, not them disabling my access mid all hands. Confusion. You told me not to email anyone, I said. You told me to keep it internal. And then you fired me the day Grayline asked for clarification. A pause, a tiny one. Then he said softer, Ethan, you were stressed. You've been making waves. We made a decision. He was building a narrative in real time. If I was stressed, then I was unreliable. If I was making waves, then I was disruptive. If I was emotional, then anything I said could be dismissed. I kept my voice flat. I didn't make waves, I said. I reported a problem, you ignored it. His tone sharpened. You need to stop contacting Grayline. Now. Or what? I asked. Another pause. Then, or we'll have to treat this as interference. There are legal implications when a former employee engages a client without authorization. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so clean, so textbook. He was threatening me while pretending he was protecting the company. I took a slow breath. Darren, I said, my name is on those approvals. If Grayline escalates this, it becomes a me problem in court if I don't protect myself. You're not thinking clearly, he snapped. No, I replied, calm. For the first time, I am. Silence stretched. Then Darren shifted and the mask slipped just enough to show teeth. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You're going to forward me everything you sent Grayline. Then you're going to stop. We'll handle it. I understood what handle it meant. They'd bury the paper trail. They'd investigate internally. They'd announce a procedural error. And if someone needed to be named, it would be the guy who just got fired. Me. So I said, no. Just one word. He inhaled sharply like I'd insulted him. Excuse me? I'm not forwarding anything, I said, and I'm not stopping. Ethan, he warned, slow and cold, you're making a serious mistake. I looked at the folder on my desk and the timeline notes on my laptop, and I realized something that made my skin go colder than anger ever could. They weren't scared of Grayline, they were scared of what I had. Then I guess we're both making choices, I said. I hung up. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight, like I'd just stepped onto a narrow bridge and the river below was moving fast. Because now the company wasn't just cutting me off. Now they were actively trying to control the story, and that's when the first real wave of injustice hit me. Not as an emotion, but as a fact. They were going to destroy my reputation to save their renewal. I opened my email again. 3 new messages, all from Hawthorne. Subject lines that made my stomach turn. Return of company property. Notice. Final pay adjustment. Policy reminder, confidentiality, and client contact. And then one last email, short, almost casual, from HR. Ethan, please confirm your forwarding address for your termination packet. Termination packet. Not separation. Not layoff. Termination. They were building a legal wall around themselves. I stared at that word for a long time. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I called an employment attorney, not because I wanted revenge, because I didn't want to be the guy on the news whose approved fraud charges got him blacklisted. The attorney's name was Lana Park, a friend of a friend, 10 years in corporate employment disputes. When she picked up, I tried to keep my voice controlled, but I could hear the edge in it. I think my company is trying to set me up, I said. There was a beat of silence. Then she replied with a tone that made my blood run colder. Okay, she said. Start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out. So I did. I told her about the shipments, the logs, Darren's response, the all hands, the account disablement, Grayline's email, Darren's threat. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said very calmly, Ethan, you need to assume every email they send you now is written for a future courtroom. That includes every word you respond with. I swallowed. What do I do? She paused just long enough to make sure I was listening. You don't react, she said. You document. You preserve evidence. You communicate only in ways that protect you. Then, in the same measured voice, she added, and you need to understand something else. What? If they're calling it termination, not layoff, they're preparing an allegation. My stomach dropped. An allegation of what? I asked. Though I already knew the answer, her voice stayed steady. Misconduct, she said. Fraud. Breach. Something that justifies firing you for cause. Something that makes you look like the problem. I stared at my laptop screen, at my name in the email header, like it belonged to someone else. Because now I could see the full picture. They didn't cut me off because I wasn't essential. They cut me off because I was a liability. a liability with evidence. And I realized, with a sharp clarity that felt almost like relief, this wasn't going to end with me moving on. This was going to end with someone paying, either me or them. That night, I didn't eat. I tried. I heated something up, took 2 bites, and realized my jaw was locked tight like I was chewing through stress instead of food. So I threw it away and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the printed log spread out beside it like I was building a case against my own life. Because that's what it felt like. 1 week ago, I was an employee with a stable paycheck and a boss who pretended to respect me. Now I was a terminated former employee with my name tied to suspicious shipments, and a company actively sending me legal-sounding emails. And the weird part was, I wasn't even shocked anymore. I was past shock. I was in that numb, awake state where your brain stops asking why and starts asking how bad is it going to get. Lena texted me a short checklist. Save all emails as PDFs, screenshot the portal lockout. Write a timeline while it's fresh. Do not call Darren again. Do not explain yourself to HR on the phone. I followed it like scripture. Then I did something else. I opened LinkedIn. Not because I wanted a new job, because I wanted to see something. Who was benefiting? And that's when the first crack in my old view of the company widened into a clean line. Darren had posted that afternoon. A smiling photo from our conference room like nothing happened. Caption: proud of our ops team for driving record efficiency this quarter. Big things coming with Gray Line renewal. There was no mention of me, no mention of the fact he just ended my career in front of 30 people. Just team and efficiency and big things coming. I scrolled down and saw a comment from our CFO, Martin Klein. Couldn't do it without strong leadership. Let's close this renewal. Strong leadership. I almost slammed the laptop shut. But instead, I kept scrolling because anger wasn't useful unless it showed me something. And it did. A week earlier, Gray Line had posted a job opening. Senior Vendor Compliance Manager. Urgent hire. Urgent hire. That meant Gray Line wasn't just annoyed. They were preparing for a review cycle, which meant Hawthorne's renewal was already in danger, whether Darren admitted it or not. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, and something unpleasant settled into place. This wasn't a mistake they were handling poorly. This was a strategy. Step 1. Ignore my warning so there's no internal record of action. Step 2. Cut my access before Gray Line escalates. Step 3. Call it termination, not layoff. Step 4. Imply misconduct if anyone asks questions. Step 5. Keep Darren clean and keep the renewal alive. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to survive. And they were using me as a flotation device. My phone buzzed again. An email from Gray Line. Subject: Re-expedited shipment charges, compliance escalation. My pulse kicked up. I opened it and read fast. Marissa thanked me for the documentation and said Gray Line had escalated it to compliance for review. She asked one direct question. Ethan, can you confirm whether anyone else had access to your credentials, shared logins, delegated approvals, etc.? I stared at that question for a long time, because it wasn't just a question, it was a doorway. If I answered wrong, I could implicate myself. If I answered right, I could implicate someone else. But what was right? I'd never shared my password. That was true, but corporate systems don't always need your password to act under your name. Delegated permissions, token sessions, admin overrides, and then another thought landed sharp and clean. If Darren wanted my credentials used, he didn't need my password. He just needed someone in IT. Hawthorne's IT director was a guy named Raj, mid-30s, quiet, always tired-looking. He wasn't bad. He was overworked. The kind of person who said yes because he didn't have the energy to fight management. And Darren was management. I pulled up the shipment approval logs again and looked at the details I'd ignored the first time. There was a line in the metadata. Not the approval itself, something deeper. A system event tag. It was subtle, buried under timestamps and routing codes, But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Approval initiated via admin session. Admin session. That meant the approvals weren't made through my normal user interface. They were injected through elevated access. Meaning, someone with admin privileges did this, not me. My chest tightened, but this time it wasn't panic. It was clarity. I replied to Marissa carefully, I never shared my password. I did not delegate approvals. The approvals appeared to have been executed under my credentials, but the log metadata indicates an admin session was used. I attached a screenshot of the metadata line. Then I added, if compliance needs additional clarification, I'm available. I hit send. 5 minutes later, another email arrived. Not from Grayline, from Hawthorne, from HR. Subject, immediate action required. Policy breach. My stomach flipped. I opened it. It was written in that cold, sterile corporate language that pretends it's neutral while it loads a gun. Ethan, it has come to our attention. You have been communicating with a Hawthorne client without authorization following your termination. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and may result in further action. We require you to sign the attached acknowledgement and cease all contact immediately. Attached, a PDF titled Acknowledgement of Continuing Obligations. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at the email and felt something inside me finally break. Not in a dramatic way. In a quiet way, like a rope snapping after being pulled too long. Because here was the truth, plain as daylight. They weren't trying to resolve anything. They were trying to silence me, and if they could scare me into signing something, they could say I admitted wrongdoing. I forwarded the email to Lena. She replied within 2 minutes. Do not sign. Do not respond directly. I will draft a reply. Then she added one more line. Also, download every file you can legally access right now. They may delete things. I stared at that message, and the realization hit me in a way that made my throat go dry. They were going to scrub the evidence, not the public stuff, the internal stuff, the approvals, the admin sessions, the delegations, the who did what logs, anything that could point away from me. And if they scrubbed it, all I'd have left was my own copies. That's when I remembered something I hadn't thought about since my first year at Hawthorne. Back when we rolled out Grayline, we had to meet their security requirements. One of those requirements was a strict audit trail. And for compliance, Grayline demanded that vendor logs be exported monthly and stored in a separate, immutable repository. A read-only archive. I knew where it was because I helped set it up. It wasn't on Hawthorne's main server, it was on a third-party compliance platform, and only a few people had access, me, and Darren, and Raj, and compliance. My mind raced, not in panic now, but in calculation. If Hawthorne tried to scrub internal logs, Grayline's archive would still have the monthly exports, the approvals under my name, the admin session tag, the timestamps, the truth. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, and for the first time since the all-hands meeting, I felt something that wasn't fear or anger. It was a hard, focused determination, because I finally understood the real game. They thought cutting me off would make me powerless. But they didn't realize something. I wasn't just an employee. I was the person who designed the system they were now trapped inside, and if they wanted to make this a legal fight, then I wasn't going to win by yelling. I was going to win by record. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text, from a number I didn't recognize. One sentence. No greeting, no name. Just, stop talking to Grayline or we'll make this uglier. I stared at it, and my skin went cold. Not because I was scared of the threat, because I knew what it meant. They were panicking, and panicking people do stupid things. So I did the only smart thing I could do. I screenshotted the text, saved it, and then I opened a new document and wrote a single line at the top. If they escalate, I escalate smarter. Because now I wasn't trying to get my job back. I was trying to save my name. And somewhere in that shift, I realized the biggest truth of all. The day they cut me off, I stopped being loyal. I started being dangerous. I didn't sleep. Not because I was spiraling, because every hour felt like a countdown. The kind where you can hear the mechanism ticking behind the walls, and you know if you miss one step, your name becomes permanent damage. So I treated it like an incident response. Screenshots, PDFs, timelines, backups in 2 places. One printed copy in a folder, one encrypted copy in the cloud. And then I forwarded the anonymous threat text to Lena. Her reply came fast. Good. That's intimidation. We keep it. Do not engage. Then she sent me a draft email she'd written to Hawthorne's HR and legal mailbox. It was clean, sharp, and terrifying in how calm it was. It said, in plain language, I deny misconduct. I will not sign anything without counsel. All further contact goes through my attorney. We demand preservation of evidence, litigation hold. Any attempt to defame me to a client will be treated as tortious interference and retaliation. I read it twice. Then I realized something that made my throat tighten. This wasn't work drama anymore. This was legal terrain. And once you step onto legal terrain, people stop pretending. They start protecting themselves. I told Lena to send it. She did. And within 30 minutes, HR's tone changed. Not softer, not kinder, just careful. They replied with 3 sentences. Noted. Please direct future communications through counsel. We will investigate internally. Confidentiality obligations remain. No more threats. No more policy breach. No more demand to sign. That was the first time since the all-hands meeting that I felt a small hit of relief, because I just forced them to understand one thing. I wasn't alone. And then my phone rang. Gray line. Marissa again, except her voice wasn't finance anymore. It was compliance. Ethan, she said, we need to document your statement. Can you do a short call with our compliance manager in 1 hour? I looked at the clock. It was 9:12 p.m. 1 hour, I repeated. Yes, she said. We're escalating this as a vendor integrity concern. We're also freezing payment on the flagged shipments pending investigation. Freeze payment. That was the first real punch Grayline had thrown, and I knew exactly what that would do inside Hawthorne. Panic. Meetings. Blame. A hunt for a clean narrative. But that was just the beginning. I told Marissa yes. Then I called Lena. Grayline Compliance wants a statement, I said. Good, she replied instantly. I'll join the call. That's what real support feels like, not sympathy. A plan. An hour later, I was on Zoom with Grayline's compliance manager, Vikram Shah. Mid-40s, serious eyes, no small talk. Lena was a black square with her name on it until she spoke. Vikram pulled up a screen share. Ethan, he said, we have 3 expedited shipments approved under your credentials. Your documentation indicates you reported concerns internally before your access was disabled. We also see a log marker indicating admin-level initiation. He paused and looked into the camera. Confirm, did you approve these shipments? No, I said. I did not. Did you share your credentials? No. Did you ever delegate approval authority? No. Then Lena spoke, calm and precise. My client's position is that these approvals were executed without his authorization. We request Grayline preserve all relevant audit exports and communications. Vikram nodded once, no emotion. Already done, he said. That sentence landed like a brick in my chest. Heavy, solid, real. Because the moment Grayline preserved their audit trail, Hawthorne couldn't erase the story, even if they deleted every server in the building. Vikram continued. We've requested Hawthorne provide the full approval chain, including admin session identity, and to certify their response. Certify. That's compliance language for, if you lie, you're finished. He asked me a few more questions when I discovered it, who I told, what Darren said, when I lost access. I answered the facts, nothing extra. Then Vikram asked one more thing. Ethan, do you know who at Hawthorne would have admin capability in that environment? I hesitated because this mattered. If I named the wrong person, I'd look reckless. If I named nobody, it would look like I was protecting them. So I said the truth in the narrowest, cleanest way. IA leadership would, I said, and compliance. I can give you names for roles, not accusations. When the call ended, Marissa stayed on for a second. Her voice dropped. Off the record, she said. They're scrambling. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because my phone started lighting up. Unknown numbers, voicemails, emails, then a message from Darren. First one since he threatened me. 2 words. Call me. I stared at it, and I didn't, because now I understood. If Darren wanted a call, it was because he didn't want a record. So I let Lena handle the talking. Within the next day, Grayline did what big clients do when they smell risk. They pulled levers. They suspended approval authority on Hawthorne's side until the audit was resolved. That meant shipments couldn't be expedited without Grayline's manual sign-off. It slowed everything down, which meant executives were watching, which meant Darren was bleeding credibility in real time. By noon, Lena received a reply from Hawthorne's legal counsel. Not HR. Legal. They denied wrongdoing. They claimed internal controls functioned normally. And then they tried to slip in a poisonous sentence. Ethan Carter was terminated for performance and conduct concerns unrelated to Grayline. Lena forwarded it to me with one line. They're planting defamation for later. We counter. She drafted a response that made my stomach unclench. She demanded my personnel file, the termination rationale in writing, any investigative notes, the identity of the admin session used for the approvals, a certification that no records were altered after my termination, and she included something else, one paragraph that changed the temperature. Any dissemination of false statements to Grayline or any third party will be treated as defamation per se and retaliation. Translation, try it. That afternoon, something happened I didn't expect. Raj, the IT director, called me. I almost didn't answer, but the name on the screen made my pulse jump because it made sense in a way I didn't like. I picked up. Ethan, Raj said, and his voice sounded wrecked, like he'd been awake for 2 days. I shouldn't be calling you. No, I said, you shouldn't. A long pause, then he exhaled. They're blaming you, he said. They're saying you approved those shipments and then panicked and started emailing Grayline. I kept my voice steady, but my hands were cold. Did you do anything with my account? I asked. Silence, not denial. Silence. Then Raj said quietly, I was told to open an admin session and push approvals through, because Grayline needed it fast. Darren said it came from the top. My heartbeat slowed, not from relief, but from the strange calm that comes when the truth finally stops moving. Do you have proof? I asked. I have ticket history, he said, and access logs. But, Ethan, they're telling me legal will destroy my career if I talk. Lena's voice was in my head. Every move now is written for court. So I didn't plead with Raj. I didn't promise him protection I couldn't guarantee. I said something real. Raj, I said, if you want to protect yourself, you document what happened, and you tell the truth through the proper channel. Grayline compliance, or counsel. He swallowed. I can't be the only one, he whispered. I can't. And there it was, the micro break in the wall, not enough to end it, but enough to let air in. Then don't be, I said. Do it the right way. We ended the call, and when I set my phone down, I realized my hands weren't shaking, because the chaos wasn't random anymore. It had a shape, a motive, a chain, and for the first time since they cut me off, I felt the power shift, just slightly away from them. Not because I'd won, because I'd forced the truth to exist somewhere they couldn't delete it. That night, Grayline emailed Lena and me a short update. One sentence. cold, corporate, devastating. Until resolution, Hawthorne's renewal discussions are paused. Paused. That meant Darren's entire world just stopped. And I knew what that would trigger next. When a company feels cornered, it doesn't apologize. It chooses a sacrifice. So I closed my laptop, stared at the dark window, and said the sentence I didn't realize I'd been building toward for days. If they want a scapegoat, they're going to have to fight me for it. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No more anonymous texts. No more sign this emails from HR. No more Darren pretending we were still on speaking terms. Just quiet. And that was the first thing that told me something had changed. Because when people are confident, they threaten you. When they're cornered, they go quiet and start negotiating with reality. At 10:18 a.m., Lena called. They scheduled an emergency board review, she said. Grayline demanded it. I sat on the edge of my bed, fully awake now. How do you know? I asked. Because Hawthorne's counsel just asked for a time window to resolve this discreetly, she replied, and Grayline Compliance sent a written request for certifications. That doesn't happen unless someone upstairs is panicking. I exhaled slowly. It still didn't feel real. Not yet. Because I knew corporate life. I knew how slippery it could be. The company could still try to pin it on me in some new way. They could still flood LinkedIn with vague comments about ethics. They could still quietly blacklist me. So I asked the only question that mattered. Are we safe? I said. Lena paused. Ethan, she said, you did the one thing most people don't do. You documented early. You stayed factual. And Grayline preserved the audit trail. That means they can't rewrite the chain. Then she added, almost casually, and Raj did the right thing. My stomach tightened. Raj talked? I asked. Not to Hawthorne, she said. To Grayline, through counsel. I closed my eyes for a second. That one sentence removed the last weak plank they had left. Because now it wasn't my word against Darren's. It was evidence against ego. Around noon, Grayline sent a formal notice to Hawthorne. I didn't get the whole document, just the section their compliance team CC'd Lena on, because it referenced me. But the language was unmistakable. Vendor integrity violation, unauthorized approvals, misrepresentation of approval, authority, immediate remediation, required certification under penalty of perjury. Penalty of perjury. Hawthorne didn't have room to spin anymore. They had room to either tell the truth or get crushed by it. At 2:05 p.m., my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it out of habit. But Lena texted, answer, put it on speaker. I'm on the line too. So I did. Ethan, a voice said. Not Darren, a new voice, older, controlled. The kind of voice that doesn't waste words because it's used to people listening. This is Martin Klein, CFO of Hawthorne. My throat went dry. This was the guy who'd commented strong leadership under Darren's post. Hi, I said. There was a beat. Then Martin spoke like he was reading from a script. I'm calling to inform you that Hawthorne has opened a formal investigation regarding unauthorized approvals linked to your credentials. I said nothing. Martin continued. We have identified actions taken without your authorization. We consider you a witness, not a subject. Witness, not a subject. That was corporate language for, we can't make you the fall guy anymore. Lena's voice cut in, calm and sharp. Mr. Klein, please confirm whether Hawthorne is retracting its prior characterization of Mr. Carter's termination as conduct-related. Silence. Then Martin said carefully, yes. The termination classification will be amended. All external references will be corrected. Corrected. My jaw tightened. So they were admitting it, without admitting it. But I wanted one more thing, not revenge. Closure. What happens to Darren? I asked, and Martin didn't answer right away. Then he said, that will be addressed internally, meaning, yes. They just weren't ready to say it out loud. Martin cleared his throat. There is also a proposal, he said, and I almost laughed again. Same impulse as before. because of course there was. We would like to discuss a consulting arrangement, he continued, temporary, to assist in stabilizing gray line operations. We believe you are uniquely positioned to help. There it was, the full circle. They cut me off like I was replaceable. Now they were asking for help because they'd learned what replaceable really costs. I looked at Lena's name on my screen and she said one quiet word, terms, so I kept my voice steady. I'm open to hearing terms, I said, through counsel. Martin exhaled, almost like relief. Understood. The call ended, and for the first time in days, I sat there without my heart racing. Because the main fight, the one about my name, was effectively over. That afternoon, Lena sent me a draft agreement. It wasn't emotional, it was surgical. It included a written retraction of any misconduct, claim a neutral reference clause, a non-disparagement clause, mutual, a consulting rate that was, frankly, insulting compared to the risk I was taking, and a release clause that tried to quietly shield Hawthorne from everything Lena called it exactly what it was. A cleanup attempt. So we cleaned it up back. We countered with 3 months minimum retainer, paid up front a rate that reflected urgent risk mitigation indemnification. If anyone tried to drag my name into this later, and one additional requirement, a written notice to Grayline confirming I was not responsible for the approvals. Grayline approved that last part immediately, because they wanted the truth clean and documented too. 2 days later, I got the email from Grayline Compliance, short, formal, final. Ethan Carter is not considered responsible for the unauthorized approvals. Thank you for your cooperation. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, because I needed to feel it. My name was safe. And then the most satisfying part happened in the quietest way possible. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting match, no hallway scene, just a LinkedIn update. Darren's profile headline changed. The VP of Operations tag disappeared. A week later, Hawthorne posted a bland announcement, leadership realignment to support strategic priorities. They didn't say his name, but everyone inside that industry understood what it meant. He didn't fall because of me being petty. He fell because he treated compliance like an inconvenience and people like disposable parts. And when Grayline pulled the lever, the company did what companies always do. They cut loose the person who caused the risk, not the person who warned them. As for me, I didn't go back, not as an employee. I signed a consulting contract so clean it could have been framed, did exactly what Grayline needed for stabilization, and then I walked away, with a retainer in my account, with my reputation intact, with proof archived in 3 places, and with one lesson burned into me so deeply I don't think it'll ever leave. Loyalty is earned, respect is documented, and when a company cuts you off to save itself, sometimes the best revenge isn't ruining them. It's letting them come back and charging them for what they tried to erase.